Imagine waking up one morning and finding yourself trapped inside your own house, not by accident, not by bad luck, but because someone deliberately parked their shiny silver SUV across your driveway like it was her personal barricade. And not just anyone, this was the self-crowned queen of our HOA, Karen Mitchell. By the time this story was over, she would lose not only that car, but the house she lorded over everyone with. And it all started because she thought she could control me. I live in a small suburban neighborhood, a place that should have been peaceful quiet, the kind of area where kids ride bikes and people wave as you drive by. My home was built before the HOA ever existed, which meant I was grandfathered and exempt from their endless list of rules. My grass didn't have to be trimmed to the exact blade, my mailbox didn't have to be their approved shade of beige, and frankly, I liked it that way. But Karen hated it. She thrived on authority, walked around with her clipboard like it was a badge of power, and expected every single resident to bow to her decree. The fact that I slipped through her net infuriated her. That morning when I opened my door, coffee in hand, I froze. Her SUV wasn't just parked near my property, it was angled perfectly across my driveway. There was no way out. I stood there for a few seconds, hoping maybe she'd made some mistake, maybe it was a visitor. But deep down, I already knew better. Sure enough, a minute later, she strutted out of her house wearing oversized sunglasses and that smug smirk I'd come to know too well. She didn't apologize. She didn't even look embarrassed. She just tilted her head and said, "Maybe now you'll start showing up to HOA meetings like the rest of us." I couldn't believe it. She wasn't just inconveniencing me, she was trying to force me into submission. I told her to move her car. Her reply, "Not until you agree to join the HOA. Everyone else chips in, why should you be exempt?" That single sentence lit a fuse in me, but I wasn't about to let her win right then. I told her I'd call a tow truck, and after a long pause, she finally shifted her SUV, still smiling like she'd already claimed victory. I drove to work, but her face, her words, that arrogance, they replayed in my head all day like a broken record. When I came home, it got worse. Taped to my front door was a fake HOA notice. Printed logo at the top, a list of ridiculous violations. My grass was a fraction too long. My trash cans were visible from the curb for an hour. And my favorite, lack of community spirit. I laughed out loud at that one, but the laughter didn't erase the truth. This wasn't just a parking stunt. She was escalating. That night I sat at my computer and started digging. If Karen wanted to treat this like a chess match, then I needed to understand my opponent. The more I searched, the more her empire cracked open. Public property records showed she was living way beyond her means. That gleaming SUV financed, her picture-perfect home, multiple refinances, a mortgage teetering on the edge. Even her backyard pool, the one she bragged about at every HOA meeting, was built on borrowed money. She was barely staying afloat, juggling loans and payments like spinning plates. And the second one fell, they'd all come crashing down. For a moment I almost pitied her. Almost. But then I remembered standing in my own driveway, blocked in, while she smirked and told me I had no choice. That pity burned away fast. A week later, it happened again. Late at night, I heard the rumble of her SUV pulling up. The next morning, there it was sprawled across my driveway once more. This time, I didn't yell, I didn't threaten, I didn't even knock on her door. Instead, I made a phone call. Not to the cops, not to a tow truck. I called the bank that actually owned her shiny silver crown. With the VIN number clearly visible through the windshield, I gave the repossession department everything they needed. At first, they sounded cautious, but the moment they pulled up her account and saw the delinquent payments, they switched into gear. That afternoon, while I leaned on my porch rail sipping coffee, a tow truck rumbled down the street. Two men hopped out, hooked up her SUV, and began winching it onto the flatbed. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. Karen came flying out of her front door in a bathrobe, hair sticking up, screaming like they were kidnapping her firstborn. "That's my car." "You can't take it," she shrieked. The repo driver didn't even blink. Calmly, he handed her the paperwork. "Ma'am, you're behind on payments. Until you're current, this vehicle belongs to the bank." The look on her face, God, I'll never forget it. Her smug smile was gone, replaced with wide, furious eyes that snapped to me. You did this. You called them. I didn't deny it. I just sipped my coffee and said, now you know what it feels like when someone takes something that doesn't belong to them. For the first time since I'd known her, she had no words. She just stood there barefoot on the pavement as her prized SUV disappeared down the street. For weeks afterward, she went quiet. She walked to HOA meetings instead of rolling up in her luxury ride shoulders, stiff face tight. The swagger was gone. I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd finally learned her lesson. But people like Karen don't change. Within a month, I found another bogus notice stuffed into my mailbox. More fake fines, more demands that I join the HOA. It would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. She'd lost her car, but she still clung to her illusion of control. And that's when I decided to finish what she had started. You see, during my earlier digging, I'd noticed something bigger than the SUV. The mortgage. She was months behind. Foreclosure notices had already been filed. She was one overdue slip away from losing the house she flaunted as her castle. And suddenly I realized I had all the leverage I needed. I contacted her mortgage lender. I presented myself as a concerned neighbor. I shared the truth, her reckless spending, the way she used HOA funds to suspiciously upgrade her own property, the harassment she dished out to anyone who didn't bow down. Maybe they didn't believe every detail, but it didn't matter. What I gave them was enough. Enough to tip the first domino. Weeks later, the final act unfolded. It was a Saturday morning when the moving truck rolled into her driveway. But instead of unloading furniture, it was hauling it out. Piece by piece, Karen's carefully curated life was being packed up and carried away. She stood on her lawn barking orders at the movers, trying desperately to project authority, but everyone knew. The neighbors who once endured her tyranny peeked from their blinds, some even stepped outside. No one lifted a finger to help. And me, I was right where I'd been the day her car got towed, leaning on my porch, coffee in hand, watching as the last pieces of her empire crumbled. She looked at me one final time, and there was nothing left. No sunglasses, no clipboard, no smug grin, just raw defeat. She had tried to control me by blocking my driveway, but in the end, she lost the two things she valued most, her car and her house. The same possessions that made her feel untouchable were stripped away one after the other. And standing there, I realized the lesson was simple. If you try to build power by stepping on others, don't be surprised when it all comes crashing down on you.